On today's episode of the Comics Panel, we're going to have a discussion with Jeremy Long.
Oh, bad luck.
On today's episode of the Comics Panel... On today's episode of the Comics Panel, we're with Jeremy Long.
Can this be my host? And I know you know my dad and how he doesn't know how to work a camera phone.
I've heard about that. I've heard about
That's
that.
the one thing you know about my dad so far.
Do you want to elaborate on that, or should we just move along?
They'll figure it out.
Okay, they'll figure it out.
You guys know my dad. The audience at home.
More or less, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm supposed to ask you a question now. Okay.
Oh, I'm back.
And I won't ask those questions.
You know, Steve, good to be back.
So I'm supposed to ask you some questions now.
You lost some hair since the last time I saw you. Oh, wait, that was Grogan.
Okay, you got that. We're going to be here till midnight. You're killing me. Okay. Hui. I hate you right now. You know what? Quit being pendulous, will you?
Good to see you. Good to be back.
Okay, so... So, Jeremy.
Yes, Steve.
Welcome back to the show.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
About this time, I'm supposed to ask you a few questions. First of all, I want to know, did you see that new movie that's being made about Freddie Mercury?
Yes, actually.
You did?
With Rami Malek.
Yeah, right? Mm-hmm. It looks pretty cool, doesn't it?
We worked with him at the new company I work with, Here Be Dragons. It's a VR company.
Yeah?
We did a Mr. Robot VR piece.
Really?
We got to, yeah.
It's very cool.
It's pretty cool. It ties in the first and second season.
He looks extremely fleek in that movie.
He does look fleek. He's very on fleek. And it does look like it's going to be a good movie.
Yeah.
They released some images of what he looks like, and he nailed the Freddie Mercury. In fact, I would say that he looks lit AF.
Absolutely. Totally AF. So, where are you doing stand-up these days?
Here or in California?
Wherever.
In California, I'm all over the place on a almost nightly basis. Between very famous places like the Comedy Store and the Hollywood Improv and the Laugh Factory to some not as famous places but still great venues such as Flappers, Federal Bar, the Warehouse, things like that. And while I'm in town here this week, I'll be at Perking Point on Monday, which is tomorrow.
Where's that?
On 39. Right by the Giant.
Oh, okay.
And Friday I'll be at St. Thomas Roasters in Linglestown. Of course, I would promote those, but this will be out after I'm gone, so no point in that.
Maybe it'll air this Tuesday. You never know. You never know with us. You never know.
I'll promote my December shows.
There you go.
I don't have any yet.
Oh, okay. Have you ever had any hecklers in your in the crowds? You're not one of those guys that puts hecklers in the crowd.
No.
Don't
do that. I'd like to say no, but that'd be lying. I don't have any real abrasive heckler stories as of yet, which seems odd.
Hi, I'm Officer Ditko. We'll get back to the show in one moment. But first, I'm here to ask you to subscribe to the Comics Panel YouTube channel. It's not that difficult, and you'll be sure not to miss one episode. I'll wait. Go ahead and click the button. What are you waiting for? I don't have all day. Click the button, maggot! Thank you. And now, back to the show.
The first story that comes to mind with hecklers, and it wasn't your average heckler that you think of who, when you think of that, you immediately think, you suck, get off the stage, or whatever. Never really had anything that bad. I have had people talking in the audience and things like that. So, but the first heckler story that comes to mind would be before I moved to California. When I was still here, I was booked to play this music festival somewhere around here. And it was like for breast cancer awareness or something like that. And so a bunch of, I guess, local bands were playing. But I was supposed to be the MC, so I went up and told some jokes. And then I'd go up in between the bands while they were taking down instruments and setting up the next one and stuff, and tell some more jokes and introduce the next band. And that was not a good gig because nobody wanted to see me. They were there for the music. So I get up there, and then their attention would immediately be lost right away, and they would just start talking and to themselves and not paying any attention to me whatsoever. And so aside from that, I do remember one guy kind of heckling me. Not like really extreme, but he was like yelling out stuff because I guess he wasn't interested or didn't find me funny, and he was wearing a "Who's Your Daddy" shirt. So I just said, "Do you really want to know who my father is, sir? I could call him right now, and you can have a conversation with." I just started to I just referenced his shirt and started asking him a bunch of questions since he was yelling out at me. And then I was like, okay, and then that was it. But it was a bummer because I was with my mentor and comedy friend Frank Cotolo at that show, and him and I were writing comedy gold on the spot. I was using all my pre-written material, but also we were writing jokes on the spot based off of songs that the bands were playing and the names of the bands. And I wish more people would have paid attention to that show because there were some good ones in there.
I know you for like 5 minutes, and I think you're funny.
Oh, thanks.
We've had a couple of laughs, I think.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
You were heavily intoxicated, like most of my audiences, but
I refuse to comment on that. But yes. And is there anyone that you admire that has been to one of your shows?
Yes. A friend of mine, Andy Dick,
okay,
has seen me perform many times, and I've opened for him several times at shows that he's done. That's probably one of the first people of a celebrity status that I have looked up to ever see me perform. And he, I performed with him on the same stage. I've opened for him. We've done stuff together. It's great. I like to think Adam Sandler kind of saw some of my stuff in the sense that I opened for him once on accident.
On accident?
And that's to say that what he does is he doesn't do shows anymore because he's Adam Sandler.
Mm-mm.
If he's preparing for a tour of some kind, he will just pop in on random nights at some of the famous clubs that I play at, like the Improv and the Comedy Store, and he'll do a set and he'll work out some new material. So we were doing a show at the Improv one time. A buddy of mine hosts the show, and I was booked on it, and I did my set. And while I was on stage, he must have stopped in because I leave, and my buddy, the host, comes up and goes, "Now, bringing up our surprise special guest, just dropped in." My friend didn't even know he was going to be there. Adam Sandler. So of course everybody flips out and loves it, and so I opened for him. I guess I went up, right before him, unplanned. And then so I talked to him afterwards, and I said, "Hey, my name's Jeremy." Obviously a little nervous. And my name's Jeremy. I went up before you, and I'm a comedian too. Haha, funny. And he's like, "Oh, Jeremy, great. I didn't see you, but I'm sure you're funny because you're goofy looking." So which is great. I mean, that's a fun thing to have said to you by somebody that you look up comedically. But he did say that he didn't see me, but maybe he saw something, or at least one joke at the end, and just didn't say it. Also, I did a show.
That was the Adam Sandler story you were
There's
telling me
another
about?
Adam Sandler story.
There's another one?
Should I say it now since we're on the topic?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Then not years later, months later.
Years later, you're like 7.
Yeah.
Just go ahead.
And then after I was out of diapers, a couple months later, I was performing again at the Improv, and he decided to stop in again. Although luckily this time I had went on earlier, or he stopped in later, whatever you want to call it. So I was already done with my thing. I was hanging out in the back, and he comes in, and he's just hanging back there. Now, one thing about the Improv is there's no real backstage area. There's two stages in the Improv. There's the main stage, which has the famous Improv sign behind it. There's improvs throughout the country too, but the Hollywood Improv was the first one,
Right.
created by the famous Bud Friedman. And then there's like a Pittsburgh and all over, almost in every state. So the main stage has the Improv, and then there's a little room on the side, still a decent room, called the Lab, where they have smaller shows and amateur. Although Sandler prefers to perform in the Lab. He prefers it there. He likes it. It's a more intimate space, and he just likes that environment more. So whenever he stops in, he performs in the Lab, not the main room. And so, but what I was saying was there's no backstage area. So you can't, all the comics just hang off to the side at the bar or in the back or whatever. So he came in quietly and was hanging out in the back. And luckily, no one really saw him because it was dark. The lights were out, except for the stage. Otherwise, they would have swarmed him. And he was talking to me, and he was standing there at first, and we were watching whatever comedian was up, and we were both like laughing at that comedian. He's like, "Hey, this guy's pretty funny," he says. I'm like, "Yeah." And then he's like, "Are you comic?" I guess because I was standing where I was and not sitting. It's like, "Yeah, I was up earlier and so on, and I did a show that you were at before and such and such." "Oh, okay, yeah, I think I remember you." And I said, "Plus we have some mutual friends. One of my really dear friends is Blake Clark, who has been in almost every Adam Sandler movie. I don't know if you remember The Water Boy.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah.
He was Farmer Fran, the one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And he was the dad in
50 First Dates.
50 First Dates, and Little Nicky. He was one of the demons. Yeah. And he's been in other movies that aren't Adam Sandler movies, but and he
Hello. We will return to the show momentarily. You may not recognize my face, but you would recognize my name. I am a comic book writer, and I am here to ask you to subscribe to the Comics Panel's YouTube channel. This will ensure that you shan't miss a single episode. Who knows? I may even tell you my name. Go on, click the subscribe button. I'll wait. Thank you. Now, back to the show.
referencing the question that this all spun off of. Blake has also seen my comedy and loves it, which is good because I've always liked his work as well. So Adam's, "Oh, Blakey boy, yeah." So then we had a mutual friend in contact that kind of warmed up the meeting. And then we just talked for the rest of the show.
Yeah.
Didn't watch any of the comics. We shared a lovely half-hour, 45-minute conversation where we were talking about comedy and talking about the art of stand-up comedy. And I was talking about my set and how, and I forget how we got on the topic, but I brought up how I record my sets and listen to them. And he's like, oh, so you can critique them and, take out ones that don't work or fix them. And I'm like, yeah, and so on. And I'm pretty a harsh critic on myself. And he's like, me too. That's why I don't record any of my sets, or I'd be down to 2 minutes of material. But yeah, so that was a really great experience.
Cool.
Having that time.
Very cool.
Then I did a show at the Comedy Store not too long ago, maybe back in like June of this year. And surprise, surprise, Sherry O'Terry was in the audience from Saturday Night Live, who of course did one of my favorite Saturday Night Live skits, reoccurring Saturday Night Live skits ever, with Will Ferrell, the Spartan Cheerleaders.
Okay.
And she made a point of seeking me out after the show to tell me how much she loved my comedy, which was a real treat, and said I was her favorite of the whole show and so on and so forth. So that was great. And then even more recently, a dear friend of mine, Jim West, or as his friends call him, Chemo, his Hawaiian name, is the guitar player for Weird Al Yankovic.
Oh, okay.
For his entire career, Weird Al's career. So he's been his guitar player for the last 30 years or so. And but he also does his own music. He plays Hawaiian slacky guitar music under the name Jim Chemo West, and releases that as well. Beautiful music. And he came with his wife to see my show. I invited him to see one recently. He came out. Again, nothing but kind things to say, which I really appreciate. But then even more recently, we're talking about only 2 weeks ago now, when I was over at Jim's house to visit, I asked, or we were talking, he brought it up again and said how funny he thought I was and how much he enjoyed the show. And he said, I talked to Al. I'm going to get him to come to one of your shows because I think he'd really like your kind of humor. And I was like, I tried to make it not noticeable that I my pants. Okay, sounds great. Because I've been the biggest Weird Al fan since I was like 7.
Yeah.
So for that to happen, for him to come to my show after I've seen him live over a dozen times, and me make him laugh, I would probably just retire after that show.
That's very cool.
So I think that's a pretty good list so far.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Should I check the?
You can check the official producer
check
list.
the official producer text message of.
Which Willy Wonka did you like better?
It's definitely
Johnny Depp or Gene
No,
Wilder?
Johnny Depp isn't Willy Wonka. Come on.
That's true.
No.
PA, can we?
So, this other one is any cute chicks sitting in the front row.
All the time.
All the
Almost
time?
every show.
Yeah.
Yes, almost every show, and if not in the front row, somewhere in the audience that I can see. And I do have women approach me sometimes after shows. Thank you so much, sir. I didn't mean to cause a kerfuffle. I do have women approach me sometimes, but it never seems to go anywhere because I'm really bad at that stuff. Like, they'll come up to me and be like, "Oh, you were so funny," and literally this one girl said, "Jerry, I thought you were absolutely hilarious, and I want to be friends with you." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And then I walked away. I didn't get a number.
You didn't ask him to a Waffle House or anything?
I got no information.
No?
It was a thing where I recall she was being dragged away by her friends because I think they were trying to get the hell out of there after the show was over. But as they passed me and I was talking to somebody else, I think, she like grabbed me and was like, "I think you're so funny, I want to be friends, but I gotta go." And I'm like, "Okay." And then they pulled her away and she left. And if I was smart, I would have been like, "Well, here's my number," or "Find me on Facebook."
You ought to have like some cards
But I have cards
ready for that. Like, just yeah.
They say so I'm not good at that kind of stuff, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But I do have, like, there is always, unless I'm performing at a Jewish synagogue, there is usually very attractive women in the audience.
Oh, have you performed in a Jewish synagogue?
Only once, and it was in a nightmare that I had.
Was there an angry pirate in that?
No, but
Dream?
there was an angry anesthesiologist
Really?
who was for some reason driving a limo with Gilbert Gottfried in the back.
That's incredibly weird.
I never used to reference the attractive women in the audience in my set ever until I have this new joke that's my opening joke for every set, except for the Perking Point show that nobody listening to this will come to because it's tomorrow. But that show has to be family friendly, unfortunately, so I have to cancel it out. But in my joke about being on PCP, which is how I open my routine these days, I reference the beautiful women in the audience and how they, I think they're all beautiful, but they shouldn't tell their dates what I just said. Listen, I'll tell you the routine after the show.
That's somewhat pendulous. That's very pendulous.
Yes.
Let me see. Where are we here? I'm particularly fond of this question.
Okay.
What is your day job?
Why are you particularly fond of that question?
Because it would seem that comedy is your day job, but
It is not.
it is not.
Comedy does not pay the bills, unfortunately, and up until recently, I got $0 for comedy. Only recently did I make my way to finally being able to headline certain venues and finally starting to get paid. And until then, for the first 2 years I was in LA, I was doing it free of charge.
Wow.
So yes, the comedy is an evening and weekend.
So to reference the whole comic aspect, where Uncle Ben tells Peter Parker, with great
Power comes
Power
great
comes great
responsibility.
you were just doing your thing.
I was doing my thing.
comedy-wise.
I was trying to get to the point where I am now, and then continue to get.
You like
beyond
how,
this
You
point.
like how I worked a whole comic thing in there? That's something, wasn't it?
That's true. I also really like the clicking noise in the background.
Which you never hear. You never hear that.
Have confidence, Buttercup.
Okay.
He needs more liquid courage.
And we just fresh out.
And grab me a boxed lunch while you're up there, please.
Some tossed salad in it.
Story.
It's okay. I'm actually interested in the stories
Oh,
you're
good,
telling.
thanks.
To be honest with you, I don't. Who's the famous people I met? I went to the Walker Stalker Con and shook hands with the guy who plays Abraham, who played Abraham,
Oh.
who got his head beat in. You know.
Oh, yeah.
And my girlfriend's sister's like, you smell good.
Abraham?
Yeah, we had to take a picture together because it's really expensive to take a picture with these people.
Yeah.
And she's
outrageous.
on this side, and she's like, "You smell good," and I'm like standing next to him, not trying to do a reach around.
Yeah.
And it's on the other side, by the way.
Oh, is it?
And
Yeah.
and I'm trying.
Somehow that got in there.
I was, and it just so it presented itself, and I, so
Pretty sure we're not supposed to talk about fellatio.
probably not.
I don't know if you do it in class.
The day job. It was. So when I first moved there, I took a job at a movie theater for 3 months. It was like my first job because I needed some
were you doing
sort of
there?
income. A little bit of everything. Projection, ticket tearing, concession stand. At this particular theater, which to my knowledge is the only one that does it in all of the country, because I certainly know that there's none around here that do it, and I also know that there's none in California that do it besides this particular chain, which is ArcLight Cinemas.
Okay.
They have a person come up at the beginning of the screening about 3 minutes prior and do like a little speech, like, "Hey, welcome to ArcLight Cinemas. The movie you're about to watch is,
That's old-fashioned, isn't it?
Glass Bottom Boat," and it stars Rodney Dangerfield and whatever, and it's a runtime of so and so, and my name's Jeremy, and I'm here to make sure that you have the best experience possible. I'll be over off to the side, making sure the screen and the sound quality are up to ArcLight standards. blah, 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 blah. Basically feeding them a whole bunch of lies of stuff that we never did anyways. And but that was obviously my famous job my favorite job there as somebody who loves being in front of audiences, was to literally all day go in front of audiences, and I'd always like throw jokes into my intros. Like if it was a 3D movie, make sure you got your 3D glasses. If you put those on now, it'll look like I'm actually standing in front of you talking.
Did anybody laugh like I just did?
Some people did.
Okay, good.
Most people just breathe out their nose heavily. So I worked there for about 3 months or so, just because I needed a job. Of course, and no matter what job I tell you in this list, I always did comedy in the evenings and weekends, almost every night. So then I left that job when I got my first real job as on this TV show called The Carbonero Effect, which is a hidden camera magic show.
Okay.
On True TV. And I worked there. I was working there when I was here on the show last time.
And what did you do there?
I worked in post-production, editing and such. And I was there for about 2 seasons, which is about a year and a half. And then I quit because the producer of the show, who I will not say his name, but it's easily Googled. But don't bother Googling it because it's just not worth your time. We did not get along.
I kind of got that vibe. I just sort of got that vibe.
So I left. And then I work for over a year now at a VR company, virtual reality, called Here Be Dragons. And we do a lot of great VR content, which is a new hot thing in these days, VR.
That's what I understand.
It's such a new medium that we're literally learning stuff as we work on things, and new technology is constantly coming out while we're in progress with some of the stuff we're working on.
All right, that's cool. I had a question. Follow up. When you said you did comedy on the side, like you did your day job, and then did you get paid to go to these comedy clubs and do these things, or that was all like improv to try and
Not until recently.
get you to?
Yeah, every time until a couple months ago when I finally reached. It's the same as when you have a job and you have to like kind of work your way up that totem pole. Like if you get take a restaurant job, for instance. Maybe you're the bus person, then you become a host, and then you become a waiter, and then whatever.
Right.
So it's the same thing where you kind of start off doing open mics, and then you actually get booked shows, but you're only doing like 3 or 4 minutes, and then maybe you get to do 5 minutes, and then 8 minutes, and then 10, and then finally, after a certain period of time, and after a certain number of people know you, and you've proved yourself, you can do headlining spots that are usually about 15 or so minutes, and you get paid finally.
Oh.
Dude, there you are. Look, man, cool. We'll get back to the show in just a sec. But first, you gotta click on the subscribe button for the Comics Panel's YouTube channel, man. That way, you won't miss one gnarly episode. It's right there. It only takes a sec. I'll wait here. Dude, there you are. Check this out.
And it's interesting because a lot of people ask me about it because they're like, because they know that I did comedy here before I moved there. And because I've been doing it for close to 10 years now.
Oh, yeah?
But only 3 in California since I moved out there. And it's a thing where that's a whole new world of comedy. I mean, that's like the birth of comedy almost.
Right.
And out here, what we have like, when I was here, I'd have to travel for comedy because I'd have to go.
Well, you're in Pennsylvania.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So there, it's not like we have an abundance of comedy clubs or an abundance of people looking to go to comedy shows around here. So I didn't get to do as many shows as I would like, and nobody in California gives a shit if I played at the Chuckle Hut in fuck nowhere.
You're right.
So So they didn't care is the point. So I kind of had to start from rock bottom when I moved out there and do the same thing everybody else would have. Even though I've been doing it for many years before then and had pretty much not perfected, but
you had
honed my craft,
running knowledge.
Yeah, I've been doing it for a while and such. So I did. So I worked my way up, and I didn't get paid for it at all until recently when I started doing headlining shows.
Have you ever met Billy D. Williams?
I have.
You have?
At a Comic-Con.
No kidding.
The Comic-Cons, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, a while ago.
Did you get an autograph or anything of him?
I don't think so.
No?
I think I just was like, hi, nice to meet you.
Oh, that's cool.
I don't think I wanted to pay whatever it was.
Did he have a Colt 45 in his pocket and pick it up and say,
no.
Works every time?
He did not.
No? Okay. Well, what else you got for it? Let me see what's in the. Let me see what's on the.
The producer questions?
Yeah, the producer. What is the hardest clip you've ever had to edit?
I can say that I think the hardest thing I've ever had to edit does not come from either of the professional jobs I've had since I moved out there, but rather the documentary I made on my mentor, Frank Catolo. Mainly because that was such a passion project for me that's what made it hard to edit. I'm sure the question is probably more in reference as to hard to edit physically or skillfully, perhaps is what it was referencing to. But and my answer is more emotionally. But because the jobs that I had such a textbook way of doing things, and it was is just how you do it. Whereas the documentary was a passion project of mine, where I had so much raw footage that I wanted to do everything, but then it would have been a 48-hour movie or whatever. So it was hard to edit that down and figure out what to cut and what to keep. So in that way, I would say that was the hardest thing I've ever had to edit.
That's a good answer. It's a very good answer. I have absolutely no further questions.
Is there an Alabama Hot Pocket up there?
I don't know. Do we have any Hot Pockets? No Alabama Hot Pockets? No? Okay. This probably is.
How about Hugh Janis? Is he up there?
Where do we want to go from here?
Is there more questions?
No, that was the last question. So, Jeremy, we should probably wrap this up. The producer's getting kind of antsy about our time.
Yeah, plus my manager said I only had to be here for a half hour.
Your manager?
Yeah, Stephanie.
Stephanie's your manager?
Yeah.
Okay. So, what do you have going on these days?
So aside from doing comedy just about every night in Los Angeles, which I would direct any possible viewers of because this is on YouTube, correct? So there's perhaps some California viewers.
I would hope so.
I would reference them to my Instagram page, which is just Jeremy Long. I post about all my shows on there, or Facebook. Keep your eye out for more Here Be Dragon stuff. Back on the other show, I would say watch the Carbonaro Effect, but I don't have to say that anymore.
I want to see it, but still.
No, it's still a good show. I shouldn't say that. I just don't like a certain person. But Michael's great, and the show's still great. Anyways, what I will say is I can't talk about it too much, but there is last year, around the summertime of last year, I was hired I do some freelance writing as well on the side.
Okay.
And I was hired to write, which is what I want to do. We didn't talk about that. But that's okay.
That's okay.
My end goal is not to be in post-production, but to be a writer on television show or what have you. So we're getting there. But I do some freelance writing on the side, and I was hired to write a script by this one girl. And so I got paid, and I wrote it, and by a deadline, and I sent it in last summer. And I just got word recently that they're filming it in December, and that it will be out sometime next year on, the word on the street is Redbox and Netflix release.
Very cool. And a Netflix release is not something that is looked down upon these days because of all the things that they do. They
That's
do
right.
some
That's
really
right.
serious stuff.
It is a thing where they started off. It started off as something that, while maybe not being looked down upon, was definitely the bottom of the food chain as far as distribution, because the goal, of course, is a wide release in theaters.
Sure.
That's where you get most of your money back. Then underneath that would be a limited release in theaters, whereas in like some major cities, but not all across the country or whatever. And then maybe a DVD release would be the next one on that, so you're still at least making back some of your profits. And then like an online release, being whether it be Netflix or Amazon or somewhere else online, would be like kind of the bottom. Yeah, and so that kind of changed when Netflix started, picking up really good stuff. For example, I just watched this morning actually the Meyerowitz stories. Did you see previews of this?
I haven't.
It's a new movie, not a Netflix original like a lot of their stuff. It was made elsewhere, but Netflix bought it to distribute it exclusively on Netflix. And it's a new Noah Baumbach film, who did like The Squid and the Whale and Frances Ha and some other great films.
I'm not in that loop.
And it stars Adam Sandler in a performance that he's never shown before.
Oh, really?
Brilliant. Ben Stiller, Dustin Hoffman, great cast.
Wow, I'm going to have to check that out.
It was a really phenomenal film. So, when they're releasing stuff like that and some of the other stuff they release, then yeah, it's great to be in that same ballpark. So what I've noticed Netflix is doing now is releasing some great stuff like that, and then they're still doing the stuff that they did when they first came out, their roots, so to speak, which is kind of putting some, I don't want to use the word amateur, but some,
Independent.
Very strongly independent films up there as well that aren't released elsewhere.
Okay.
So, but yeah, Netflix is great.
Very cool. Chicken. And so, maybe we'll see Jeremy again. You never know. Every now and then he pops in.
That's true.
If you like our show, like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and leave some comments below.
Where's the subscribe button?
The subscribe button might be here, over here,
or over here,
or over there.
We're not sure.
Don't confuse my girlfriend. She gets weirded out by that whole finger pointing
Oh, okay.
thing. Good night.